Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we're going to be taking a look at aspects of the Harry Potter universe that everyone seems to remember the wrong way. And partly to blame for all of this is the fact that the Harry Potter books were adapted to film. The short answer for why all of this happened is that in transforming the beloved book series into movies, a lot of liberties were taken. Characters' personalities were changed, scenes that never occurred were added, character roles were switched, and in many cases, aspects of the books were outright omitted. But now that so many years have passed, a lot of these movie misconceptions have become so ingrained that they've completely overwritten how we remember the original Harry Potter books. How you perceive this video will depend entirely on how you engaged with the series. For some, the films were too frustrating to finish, filled with inaccuracies that clashed with the books, and by going down this path, their memory of the books, and more importantly, accurate information, remained intact. But for many others, the books and movies have blended together into one seamless version of the story. Harry Potter as a whole became an amalgamation of both book and film, with the lines between them increasingly blurred. And in many instances, these changes became so pervasive that they overwrote how nearly everyone remembered the source material. After you've watched the video, let me know how many of these things you remembered the wrong way. Be honest. Anyway, let's get started. Hagrid's famous line. There are plenty of Harry Potter quotes that really stuck with and resonated with the fan base, but one that everyone loves, "You're a wizard, Harry," isn't actually the line in the book. In Philosopher's Stone, Hagrid actually says, "Harry, you're a wizard." It's a small difference, but quite a good example of how the movies subtly rewrote the dialogue that became iconic. Gillyweed. In The Goblet of Fire, the second task of the Triwizard tournament required the champions to rescue someone they cared about from the depths of the Black Lake. But there was a catch. They had to figure out how to survive underwater for an extended period of time without drowning. And we of course know that Harry eventually gets his hands on some gillyweed. Many fans will remember Neville Longbottom being responsible for giving Harry the gillyweed, but in the books, it was actually Dobby who gave it to him, after hearing about the task from Professor Moody, who was of course Barty Crouch Jr. I didn't like this change because Dobby stepping in here showed his loyalty, bravery, and independence outside of simply following orders. Reassigning the actor Neville also downplays how much behind-the-scenes manipulation was going on with Barty Crouch Jr.'s character. Who outed Dumbledore's army? The Dumbledore's army meetings in Order of the Phoenix were important, not just for learning defensive magic, but for preparing the students to stand up against Umbridge and the Ministry's control of Hogwarts. Which is why the betrayal from Cho Chang hit so hard. In the films, we see Cho being dragged to the Room of Requirement by Umbridge in the Inquisitorial Squad, and the look Harry gives her afterward says it all. Hurt, disappointment, and a complete loss of trust. After this moment, their budding relationship crumbles almost instantly. But this isn't what actually happens in the books. In the original story, it's actually Marietta Edgecombe, Cho's friend, who betrays the group, not Cho herself. "Yes," said Umbridge, pulling herself together. "Yes, well, Miss Edgecombe tipped me off, and I proceeded at once to the 7th floor, accompanied by certain trustworthy students, so as to catch those in the meeting red-handed." And interestingly, the film cuts Marietta's character entirely. It's a small change, but one that massively alters how fans view Cho's character, even today. Fate of the Burrow. The Burrow was located on the outskirts of Ottery St. Catchpole in Devon, England, and served as the beloved family home of the Weasleys. The warm, welcoming environment of the Burrow always made it seem like the perfect safe haven for Harry and gang, with the Burrow eventually going on to become the Order of the Phoenix headquarters in 1997. However, in the Half-Blood Prince film, the idealistic family home that is the Burrow met its tragic end. In a movie-exclusive scene, Death Eaters show up unannounced to the Weasley family home and, amidst the chaos, Bellatrix Lestrange sets the house ablaze, resulting in the burning of the Burrow, and at Christmas time, no less. This never actually happens in the books, and the Burrow remains very much intact. Harry's young parents. This is a weird one. In the films, Harry's parents look middle-aged. Every time we see them, old pictures in the Mirror of Erised, etc., they are considerably older than Harry. And yeah, no big surprise there. It's normal for parents to look older than you. But the problem here is that they died extremely young, with both of them falling victim to Voldemort at just 21 years old. So how come they look 45? Part of the tragedy of Harry losing his parents is that they were barely older than he is by the end of the series, and this crucial emotional detail is missing in the movies. It's strange that they decided to cast actors who were so inappropriately aged. Voldemort's death. In the films, Voldemort turns to dust after his killing curse rebounds back at him, symbolizing the end of his dark reign and the disintegration of his evil power. And because he disintegrates, his body is nowhere to be found. In the book, however, Voldemort's body remains intact, later being moved to a separate location for burial. This difference in the book highlights the idea that, despite his quest for immortality, Voldemort ultimately dies a mortal death, leaving behind a physical body like any other person. Voldemort always saw death and dying as pure weakness, a fate reserved for the unimportant and powerless. So I really appreciate his death in the books being so commonplace. To me, his film death felt a little too over the top, and it's weird because it sort of suggested he was different when he really was the same as everyone else, a mortal. Who discovered the Room of Requirement? Yet another instance of Neville swapping Dobby. In the films, we see Neville stumbling upon the Room of Requirement and leading Dumbledore's army there. But in the books, it was Dobby who tipped Harry off about the room. Come to think of it, it's weird that they gave Neville another one of Dobby's moments. Because it is a room that a person can only enter, said Dobby seriously, when they have real need of it. Sometimes it is there, and sometimes it is not. But when it appears, it is always equipped for the seeker's needs. Dobby has used it, sir. Ravenclaw in general. From the day the first Harry Potter film came out, and film is an important word here, there has been a considerable amount of confusion surrounding Ravenclaw House, and whether or not the house mascot is an eagle or a raven. If you look up Ravenclaw on Google, you're inevitably going to be bombarded with images of both ravens and eagles, but mostly ravens. And if you want to buy Harry Potter merchandise, there's a strong chance that you're going to end up with a raven on the house crest. There's also the whole issue of the house colours. So what's the deal here? While in the film Ravenclaw is represented by a raven along with the colours blue and silver, the truth is that the real Ravenclaw, the original Ravenclaw and the book Ravenclaw, is represented by the colours blue and bronze with an eagle serving as its mascot. This is proven by several passages in the books, but the films really complicated all of this. Hogwarts attire. When we think back on the Harry Potter series, we picture our favourite characters adorned in their house colours. Harry in Gryffindor's signature red and gold, and Draco in Slytherin's signature green and silver. But what movie-only fans might be surprised to hear is that all of this was a spectacle for the films. In the books, Hogwarts students just wore plain black robes with no house-specific markings. The coloured ties and house-themed accessories seen in the movies were added for visual distinction, and are in fact not based on book canon. Sharing classes. On the topic of Hogwarts students, another common misconception propagated by the films was that all four houses attend classes together. The movies often show large, mixed classes with all four houses, Gryffindors, Slytherins, Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws all sitting side by side. But in the books, classes are much smaller, typically pairing just two houses at a time. And this smaller setup wasn't just a logistical detail, it actually played an important role in the dynamics between the houses. Rivalries were more personal, friendships more specific, and the tension between groups like Gryffindor and Slytherin were heightened by being forced to share space in a much more intimate setting. Flying Death Eaters. In the Harry Potter films, we see Death Eaters fly on numerous occasions, the first time being in the Order of the Phoenix. We then see them flying again later on in the Half-Blood Prince. Apparently, flying is a common ability, at least in the films. And because we saw them fly right in front of our eyes, it has led many fans to believe that the Death Eaters can in fact fly. But this just isn't true. The reality here is that filmmakers, in the spirit of producing interesting visual effects, simply made apparition or teleportation look like flying. Flying itself is an incredibly rare magical ability known as unsupported flight, and there are actually only two known wizards who mastered it, Voldemort and Snape. How Polyjuice potion really works. In the movies, we see Polyjuice potion used quite a bit. Harry and Ron famously used it in Chamber of Secrets to disguise themselves as Crabbe and Goyle. Barty Crouch Jr. uses it in Goblet of Fire to impersonate Mad-Eye Moody for an entire school year, and in the Deathly Hallows, a bunch of characters use it to transform into Harry during the escape from Privet Drive. But one peculiar aspect of Polyjuice Potion that's inconsistently portrayed in the films is how it actually works. In the books, someone who drinks Polyjuice Potion takes on the intended person's appearance, physical capabilities, as well as their voice. And by physical capabilities, I mean things like their eyesight or strength. But in the movies, these things change depending on which film you're watching. Take the Polyjuice Potion scene in the film adaptation of the Chamber of Secrets. Harry transforms into Goyle, but, unlike in the book, Harry's vision and voice remain the same. And yet, later in the series, in the Goblet of Fire, Barty Crouch Jr. impersonates Professor Mad-Eye Moody for the majority of the film using Polyjuice Potion. The notable difference between the effects of Polyjuice Potion here is that Barty Crouch Jr. takes on Mad-Eye's voice and his lack of an eye. Then, in the Deathly Hallows movies, we see the Order of the Phoenix all become Harry, and each keep their own voices, but not their own vision. With all of these inconsistencies, I'd be surprised if people weren't confused about the true effects of Polyjuice Potion. Lupin's face. For Remus Lupin, who was infected with lycanthropy at such a young age, life wasn't easy. His condition meant that he would live a cursed existence, a solitary life full of judgment. And the physical representation of all of the struggles that Remus endured in his life showed right on his face in the form of scars. Or did they? In the films, you may remember Lupin with significant facial scarring, presumably to emphasize the hardships he's faced because of his condition. But interestingly, in the books, there's no mention of Lupin being physically scarred at all. And by giving him facial scars in the films, they overlooked what made Lupin's story so tragic in the first place. The idea that, on the outside, he looked just like everyone else, yet still lived as an outcast because of what people feared about him, not because of what they could see. Durmstrang and Beauxbatons. In the Goblet of Fire film, we witness the students of both Durmstrang and Beauxbatons dramatically enter the Great Hall at Hogwarts. And what you probably noticed immediately was that all of the Beauxbatons students were girls, and all of the Durmstrang students were boys. And the films pretty much perpetuate this idea for the rest of the story, showing Durmstrang as a rough, all-male academy of warriors, and Beauxbatons as an elegant, all-female school of graceful witches. And for many people, this is probably how you remember them. But the truth is, in the books, both schools, Durmstrang and Beauxbatons, have both male and female students. We just happen to meet a few standout characters. Triwizard Maze. In the Goblet of Fire film, the final Triwizard task, the Hedge Maze, was severely dumbed down. It wasn't just a maze full of scary vines, but it was actually filled with obstacles, including a sphinx that posed riddles, one of the coolest challenges completely cut from the film. In the books, the maze is a true test of a champion's magical skill, quick thinking, and bravery. It's filled with magical creatures and complex obstacles, blast-ended Scroots, a boggart disguised as a Dementor, and, most memorably, a majestic sphinx who blocks Harry's path. It had the body of an over-large lion, great clawed paws and a long, yellowish tail ending in a brown tuft. Its head, however, was that of a woman. She turned her long, almond-shaped eyes upon Harry as he approached. To get past the Sphinx, Harry had to solve a riddle, and this added an intellectual challenge that matched the spirit of the tournament far more than just fighting off creatures. The fate of the Elder Wand. At the end of the Harry Potter films, after a climactic final battle with Voldemort, Harry stands atop the Hogwarts bridge and snaps the Elder Wand in half, throwing the pieces off the edge. The Elder Wand is broken. But what many people may have forgotten is that, in the book, Harry repairs his own wand and then returns the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's grave, laying it to rest with him. Harry then communicates this to Dumbledore's portrait in the headmaster's office. "I'm putting the Elder Wand," he told Dumbledore, who was watching him with enormous affection and admiration, "back where it came from. It can stay there. If I die a natural death like Ignotus, its power will be broken, won't it? The previous master will never have been defeated. That'll be the end of it." So really, the Elder Wand is still out there. Meeting Professor Quirrell. By the end of Philosopher's Stone, we find out that Professor Quirrell has been hiding Voldemort in his turban. But an interesting detail in the films is that Quirrell is sporting his purple turban as early as his first run-in with Harry at the Leaky Cauldron. And if Quirrell was indeed wearing his turban during this moment, then it would imply that he was already possessed by Voldemort, which isn't true, at least in the books. In the novel, Harry meets Quirrell at the Leaky Cauldron for the first time and shakes his hand with no problem. And this is because Quirrell isn't possessed until after the attempted break-in at Gringotts. If Quirrell had already been concealing Voldemort beneath his turban during their first encounter, then Harry's handshake would have burnt him instantly, just as it did during their final confrontation. TLDR, Quirrell isn't possessed until after he meets Harry, and some people don't remember that. Lucius Malfoy's killing curse. Avada, this was what the film version of Lucius Malfoy began to utter upon the realization that he had just lost his house elf servant, Dobby. But was he really about to utter the killing curse outside of the headmaster's office in the halls of Hogwarts? And more importantly, who was he trying to kill? Harry? Of course, all of this happens after Harry tricks Lucius into freeing Dobby, sending Lucius into a fit of rage. But Avada Kedavra? Come on. The book version of this scene is pretty different, with Lucius only lunging at Harry. So why did the film show Lucius on the precipice of casting an unforgivable curse? As it turns out, this was an improvisational line from actor Jason Isaacs. Apparently, the scene merely called for Lucius to begin casting an unspecified curse, and Avada Kedavra just happened to be the first curse he thought of in the moment. So no, Lucius wasn't going to kill Harry or Dobby inside of Hogwarts. Lily's actual eye colour. A major recurring detail in the books is that Harry has his mother's eyes, and his mother, Lily, has green eyes. But of course Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Harry, doesn't. In fact, his eyes are blue. So are her eyes green or blue? Eye and eye colour seem to be a pretty big point of focus for J.K. Rowling across all of the characters, not just Harry. It's a characterization that's clearly important to her. So what happened? As it turns out, Daniel Radcliffe happened to be allergic to the green contact lenses that filmmakers tried to make him wear. But because Daniel was otherwise the perfect fit for Harry, they just overlooked it all. Snape and the Shrieking Shack. In the Prisoner of Azkaban film, Snape has a standout heroic moment when he dramatically steps in and shields Harry, Ron and Hermione from Lupin after he transforms into a werewolf. It paints Snape in a positive light for pretty much the first time in the film series, and it offers his character a moment of redemption. Personally, I liked this moment in the films, but interestingly, this never actually happens in the books. There, the scene plays out very differently. Snape never gets the chance to protect them at all, as he's knocked unconscious almost immediately after entering the Shrieking Shack, and instead it's Sirius and Harry who step up. And that's it for today's video. Which of these do you remember incorrectly? Be honest and let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.